Hello and welcome back to another command block tutorial. Today's video, we have got something special for you. That's right, we are making 3 custom special movement abilities. So without further ado, let's show them off. The first of which is pretty simple. We have a simple charged jump. All we gotta do is sneak in place, and then once we're ready, we're gonna play that ding noise and animation. That means our jump is fully charged. So we can also partially charge our jump for a little bit higher, or that's something that we'll show you in a second. Or we can fully charge, wait for the little ding and the animation, and then we have a much higher jump. But that's not all. Once we're in the air, we can actually double jump. Whenever we jump, we sneak to do a double jump. And of course, we do have an animation for this as well. I'll show you guys from the front. We have just a nice, cool little animation to basically pair along with our bonus abilities. It makes these things a lot more fun and a lot more immersive. And last but not least, we of course have a dash. So when you're on the ground, if you sneak twice quickly, you'll do a little spin and then dash a decent distance forward. So it's quite fun, and of course this is a stamina system. You guys are going to see above my hotbar, we have some kind of green zeros and negative signs that are red. I couldn't think of the word for that, but whatever. And that is going to be representing our stamina system. So different moves require different amounts of stamina, and of course they're all charged differently. So, as an example, I basically use up half my stamina whenever I do a dash. And if I don't have enough stamina, my dash won't work. Now, as I'm charging my jump charge is going to be slowly draining mana over time until I actually jump, and additionally, being in the air, double jumping is going to cause me to lose some mana. I should mention you can only double jump once per jump. But yeah, you guys can see we have a pretty in-depth movement system for you guys to implement in your worlds today, whether it's for PvP, PvE, special parkour, it doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do with it is up to you. But let's get into the actual video. Now, the first thing that we're actually going to do is the stamina system. Even though this was actually the last thing I made on stream, it makes the most sense to do it first. So the first thing that we're going to actually be doing is, of course, making the stamina scoreboard. All we got to do is type this in chat or type this in a impulse command and power it. It's up to you guys. Just make sure you type this command in at some point, but it doesn't need to be repeating, as with all scoreboards. Next up, we're going to give everyone with the tag move a stamina score +0. This just makes it so that they have a stamina score rather than no stamina score at all. The other thing that's important to mention is that this movement system will not work for everybody, only those that have the tag move. That way, not everyone in the game is able to use these movement abilities, only the players that you want to use it. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is, of course, just regenerating stamina. All this does is make it so that if my stamina score is 99 or less, we're going to get +1 stamina. And I have this on a 2-tick delay. So let me show you guys what that looks like. Let me pull back the curtain a little bit. You see that right now I have 100 stamina. But as I do different abilities, such as charge my jump, my stamina is going to go down. And basically, as I'm doing different abilities, my stamina is going to go down, but it's also constantly recharging in the background. But most of the abilities drain stamina faster than the stamina recharges. And of course, different moves drain different amounts of stamina. So, the important thing is for your guys' stamina system, how forgiving it is really comes down to this command right here. For right here, I have it on a 2-tick delay. And this is a pretty forgiving stamina system. As you can see, I can pretty much do any series of moves that I want to without much of an issue whatsoever. Really, the only times where you're actually going to be limited is if you're like doing a bunch of dashes in quick succession. You see, I'm not going to be able to do a third dash. So it is pretty forgiving, but perhaps you want it to be more forgiving. You can actually make this have a tick delay of, say, 1. And this is probably going to make it so nothing really even drains stamina. As you can see, it's much, much faster. Potentially a little bit too fast, but that is up to you guys to decide how fast you want your mana to be regenerating. Perhaps you want to limit players a bit more. You want to make it 5. And this is really going to limit how much players are going to be able to use their abilities. So if I'm just charging up here, you can see it's going to take a while before I'd be able to do that again. Also, you might want to have fall damage off. It's going to take a while before I can actually chain all these abilities together. Now, I like it at 2, but you guys can make it as forgiving or as unforgiving as you guys want. And of course, what we're gonna have to do is just make the display. So this is a lot of commands, but they are just repeating. All that we are doing is this. So basically, if the player has a stamina score between 0 and 9, we're just gonna have this display in their action bar. This is just the colored letter and then 10 lines. Then, to do the next display, we're gonna have 10 to 19, and then we're gonna have a green 0 and then a bunch of red lines. Now, of course, this is modifiable as much as you guys want. I've done a tutorial similar to this with a mana system. If you want a more in-depth explanation of how this works, feel free to check that out. But I'm just gonna breeze through all the commands, talk about them a little bit, and just briefly show them. But more or less, all that we're doing is having it so that every 10 stamina value, we have a different display on the player's scoreboard. Now, of course, you can also use, if you've used title roll before, I have another video on that explaining that as well. You can just show the number for stamina, but I think the display bar is a little bit better, and I would recommend that for most use cases because I think it looks better. But that's it. That's the base stamina system, and this is just going to play into the rest of our abilities and the rest of our movement systems. Right now, we're actually going to jump right over to the front, and that is the double jump commands. So similar to what we did before, we're going to add a scoreboard. This is D jump, and I will show that on the scoreboard for you guys. Basically, all that we're doing here is making it so that whenever the player jumps and then sneaks, they have the D jump score being added up. This makes it so that as soon as the player sneaks midair, they're going to do their double jump, but they're not going to be able to do multiple jumps in one actual jump off the ground. So let's look into how that actually works. The first thing that we're going to be doing is looking for any players that are moving that have the tag can jump, which means that they just hit the ground, and if the block below them is air, and they're sneaking, which I know that sounds like a lot, so just remember, it's a player with the correct tag, it's off the ground, it's a jump charge of 0, stamina, they have enough stamina to do it, the block below them is air, and they're sneaking, then we're going to add the score D jump. And that just makes it so as soon as I get into the air, it's going to start adding up my score. And the next thing that we're going to be doing might seem a bit confusing, but all that we're doing here is making it so that if the player's D jump score is 1 or higher, and the block below them is air, it's going to add the score of D jump. Basically what this means is that once I use my double jump, even though I'm no longer sneaking, that jump score is still going to be going up. This just makes it, once again, so that we're not accidentally double triggering things within our little X cube. And next up, we're just going to make it so that if the player is no longer on the ground, so unless block -1 equals air, so if the player is on the ground, their D jump score is set back to 0. And you guys can see that as soon as I land, 0. Pretty simple stuff. And that's pretty much all there is to the actual mechanics of how we're detecting it. So let's get into what's actually happening throughout the jump. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is giving the player levitation. Now you guys might be saying, why don't you use barrier blocks? Why don't you use something like that with barrier blocks and jump boost? I decided to go with levitation because it's a bit smoother. It's not going to accidentally leave barrier blocks or some other stuff in your world. It's not going to mess up existing barrier blocks you might have in your world. There's some slight issues with levitation, which I can discuss in a minute, but levitation with just 1 second of it and a really high value seems to be pretty consistent for the most part. The next thing that we're going to be doing is, of course, just adding a little particle. After this, we're going to play a little sound because we wanted to have some sound as we're doing this. Next up, we're going to do the animation. Now, you guys can just copy this one for one, but this is why when I double jump, my hands go up in the air, which I think looks really cool, and it definitely makes it look a lot more like a high jump because you're just kind of flinging your arms up in the air. It's a lot more fun. It is, of course, optional, but I recommend it. Next up, when the player has a D jump score of 3, we're going to give them levitation 0-0. This actually cancels the levitation. So we don't want them to have a full second of levitation. That would make the player go way too high. Instead, what we do is we actually basically give them 1/10 of a second of levitation. And 1/10 of a second of this level of levitation is actually enough to get as high as we are right now. Now, of course, if you want to reduce or increase the height of the double jump, you'll just go here and then make this number higher or lower, but I found 50 to be a good number for me. And finally, the last thing that we're going to be doing is removing stamina from the player. This just makes it so that as long as the player has enough stamina, it's going to cost them stamina to do the jump. And this is more or less how we're actually going to be balancing the stamina system. Now, I will say probably the downside to levitation, as compared to some of the other methods for double jump, is that it's very momentum based. In fact, the more momentum you have, if I do that, you'll get a lot higher. You see, if I do it right at the start of the jump, I'll get a lot higher. If I do it at the peak of the jump, I get a lot less out of it. So perhaps this is a skill thing, perhaps it's something you want to include in your game, perhaps it's not. That is one of the downsides to levitation, is it's much more momentum based than the average player would expect. However, it is very consistent in terms of actually triggering it when you want to be triggering it. And there is also occasionally the edge case where you might have seen the tutorial where I go really, really high, which is why I do recommend that you have fall damage off. That's all. These two commands are also optional, but this is for any player to have the tag move to just have a base level of jump boost, as well as a base level of speed. Just because if we're doing all these enhanced movement commands, but your base movement kind of sucks, it's not really that fun. So it is recommended, but of course, it's your guys' world. You do what you want. Next up, we have the charge jump. So if I, once again, show you guys the scoreboard. Scoreboard is jump charge. Let me put that on the display. Now you can see on the side of my screen, I don't know why I'm Steve. I should be Guppy Duck, but okay, whatever. As I'm sneaking, my jump charge is slowly going to be building. Once I hit 5, you see that thing is going to ding, and I'm going to do a little animation. What we're actually doing here is making it so that it permanently builds up. This means that the longer you charge it up, the longer you have to jump after you charge it up. So you don't have to jump from the sneak, you can actually charge it up a little bit and then sprint and jump. It's kind of nice in that way that you can actually charge it up. But of course, charging it is actually going to build, cost you stamina. So it's kind of a little bit of give or take. Now, as we go up, if I charge it just a little bit, I am actually going to get a bit higher jump boost. But one of the things that you actually want to do is really charge it up to the highest level, and that's going to give you the highest level of jump boost. So it's kind of a skill thing, but of course we have a little indicator as well as an animation for when you are fully ready and charged up for your jump. It's of course quite fun in combination with the double jump as well. So let's get into what we're actually doing. I think we actually want to start over here. Nope, we don't. We want to start right here. Once again, this does look like a lot. What we're doing here is for anything that has the tag move, has a stamina of 8, and does not have air beneath them, meaning they're on the ground, and they're sneaking, so they have the correct tag, they have stamina, they're on the ground, and they're sneaking. We're going to add a jump charge score of 1, and this is on a 10-tick delay. The next thing that we're going to do is that if the player is sneaking, and they have a jump charge of 5, this way we don't want it to happen as they're going back down, only as they're going up. We're going to play this little play animation that you guys saw earlier. Next thing that we're going to be doing, more or less the same thing. As the player is charging up, we're going to remove 8 stamina from them as they're charging up. This is what's going to be costing the stamina as they're trying to do this. And finally, I have this command block labeled wrong, but it's basically the exact same thing you saw with the play animation. What we're doing is we're just playing a note in the player's ear to make them know that they are actually ready for their fully charged jump. After this, we're going to be actually removing the charge. So what we're doing is if the player is not sneaking, but they have a jump charge score higher than 1, or higher than 0, I should say, we're going to be removing that at a 10-tick delay. Lastly, we're going to be checking if the player is in the air. So if they actually are in the air this time, we're going to actually reset their jump charge score to 0. It's pretty simple, but that's all we're doing. We should also mention that this is only happening if the player is not sneaking. The reason being is we don't want the player to have their jump charged and then instantly have their double jump activate. Wouldn't want that to happen, so this is actually how we're kind of preventing it. Last but not least, we have some of the cosmetics that go along with this and the actual jump boost effects. So if your jump charge score is between 1 and 2, you get a jump boost of 1, which is actually jump boost 2, but that's a different story. I'm not getting into that. And the volcano. Next up, that scared me. I'm not gonna lie, that scared me. Next up, if the jump charge score is between 3 and 4, they get jump boost 3. And lastly, if it is 5 or higher, so fully charged up, they get a jump boost score of 5. And we actually have some particles that accompany this. So if they're at the lowest level, they're going to have this birth crop emitter, but it's going to be on a 20 tick delay. If they're level 2, on a 10 tick delay, the exact same command. And if they're fully charged, on a 5 tick delay, the same command. This makes it so that the longer you charge, the denser these particles are going to get. You can see how dense they are at full charge. But that's pretty much it for the charge jump, which means we only have one more thing going on, and that is the dash. And all that is pretty simple. You do a little double sneak, and then we dash across. And I do actually really like the animation. I forget who it was in stream that was suggesting these animations, but I do make all my videos on stream, so make sure you check those out. But yeah, you kind of just do a little spin attack as you're going along. For those of you who are a little more experienced with commands, you can probably figure out how to turn this into a really cool attack. But I'll leave that up to you guys as a special challenge. Anyways, let's show what's actually going on. Gonna change over my scoreboard real quick. And we're gonna create the dash dummy. Yay, dash dummy! And we're also going to be adding everyone's score to 0. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we actually should have two scoreboards. I totally prepared this video. So we also want to have dash CD, and that's going to be the cooldown. And I'll show you guys what that looks like in just a second. What I should actually show you first, though, is dash CD. So what happens is, when I'm not sneaking, my dash CD score is set to 6. When I start sneaking, it goes to 0. Now you can just ignore the little charge up. Once I unsneak, it's going to quickly count up to 6. So what happens is, before my number hits 6, I need to sneak again. This is how we're detecting the double sneak. If I sneak once, I wait a bit, and I sneak again, nothing's going to happen. But if I sneak twice rapidly, then stuff is going to happen, and this is important. Like I said, what we're doing is that if the player's standing, it's going to add up to 6. If the player's sneaking, it's going to set it to 0. But if the player sneaks when it's a score between 0 and 6, that means the player double sneaked and we should dash. So let's look at how we actually did that. What we're doing here is executing at the player if their dash score is between 0 and 5, if they are on the ground, and if they are sneaking, if they are not sneaking, we're going to add a score of dash CD to 1. So basically, if it's not yet to 6, but the player is on the ground and they're standing up, start adding up to 6. Then this is going to be actually detecting the dash. So what happens here is executing at the player if the scoreboard is somewhere between 1 and 5, so they're double sneaking essentially, they have enough stamina for it, and their dash score is equal to 0, and I'll show you what that is in a second. Additionally, if they're on the ground and they're sneaking, which I know we're checking a lot of things, but it works out, just trust me, we're going to go ahead and set the player's dash score to 1. Finally, and I know this is a lot, we're going to be at the player, we're going to check if they are on the ground, that's what this command does here, and they are sneaking, set their dash score 0, cooldown 0. Which, like I said, I know that's a lot, but that just makes it so that if the player is sneaking like this, it's going to set it to 0. So the first command is adding up to 6, second command is checking if it's between 1 and 6, third command sets it to 0. So then we have the actual dash stuff that's going on. And now I'm going to switch my scoreboard back to dash to show you guys what's going on. Dash is much simpler than dash CD. All it is the timer for the dash. Pretty simple stuff. And let's show you how the actual dash functions. All we're doing is if the player's score is higher than 1, then add dash. Remember, if I'm at dash 0, I'm not dashing. If I'm at any value other than 0, I'm in the middle of my dash. So we're just going to be adding it up on a 0 tick delay. Then, of course, if the player's score of dash is higher than 1, teleport yourself forward true. Now the true here makes it so we don't go into blocks. Then, same thing, if the player's in the middle of their dash, go ahead and do this particle. And then we do the same thing again. We have another TP, we have another particle. And this just sets it to 0. So you might be wondering, I'll come back to this command in a second, why did I repeat these commands multiple times? This just makes it so you travel faster without accidentally going through blocks. So you are repeating the same commands twice, just go with it. Just trust me, Alright, then this is going to be the actual reset. So once the player hits a dash score of 10 or higher, it's going to set the dash to 0, effectively ending the actual dash. If you want the dash to go longer, make this number higher. If you want it to last shorter, make this number lower. Of course, we're also going to be playing some sounds, so as the player is in the middle of their dash, it's going to go ahead and play this sound for all players nearby. Then we're going to be doing the actual animation. So when the player's at the start of their dash, it's going to go ahead and play this animation. That's what's going to give the player the little spin as they're moving along. Finally, we're going to just remove the stamina from the player. This makes it so that the stamina system works. I think that's self-explanatory, not gonna lie. And lastly, if the player is in the middle of their dash, their double jump score is going to be set equal to 4. Which seems weird. Why am I doing that? Well, effectively, what we don't want to happen is the player to be in the middle of their dash and then accidentally double jump in the middle of their dash. So this just makes it so that if the player dashes, they can't double jump immediately afterwards. Very simple. And that's a wrap, folks. Believe it or not, that actually is everything for this advanced command system. Now, one thing that I should, of course, mention is that I actually made these commands on a live stream before the newest update that added the mace, but something like the charge jump or the double jump in combination with the mace is going to be a really strong combo that I encourage you guys to mess around with this cool system. 2 more final notes. If you guys have questions or you're not able to figure something out, you're of course welcome to leave a comment in the video description. However, your best chance of getting help is joining our Discord. There's a bunch of people there who can help you. You can send screenshots and just get a lot more help. So if you guys are needing help with your commands or you just want to join a command block community, I recommend you check out my Discord. And of course, the last thing is I make most of my things on live streams, and in fact I let you guys vote for the things that I make. So if you want to be a part of voting for the things that I make, or you just want to come along and hang out with the community as we're doing our live streams, as we're making these commands, make sure you just keep an eye out when I do my live streams and subscribe with notifications on just so you don't miss them. But other than that, hope you guys enjoyed. Bye!